40 plus years ago, a starry-eyed Jim Davis and a pubescent Lynn Johnston stood at a cocktail party at this very gathering, literally gawking at the likes of iconic cartoonists like Milton Caniff, John Colin Murphy, Uncle Fred Laswell, Mel Lazarus, Mort Walker, Johnny Hart, Grant Parker, Brad Anderson, Dick Brown, Bill Keane. And I had an epiphany. I leaned over to Lynn and I said, you know what? If we do this right, someday we'll get to be the old guard. And so last year, Kansas City, sitting in one of the conferences, Lynn leaned over and said, you were right. And of course, since I'd long since forgotten my epiphany, I said, right about what? And she said, here we are, we're the old guard. And so it's amazing that we're working in an industry where we all look forward to getting to work because, as was mentioned earlier, we love what we do. And Brian Walker said the other day, his friends are all retiring, and they're asking when he's going to retire, and he goes, excuse me? You know, the thought of retiring. So I've often wondered, too, about the future with the digital age and everything coming along. What about the future of cartooning? But I tell you, after visiting with the young cartoonists and everything going online and seeing the passion and the heart and awesome skill exhibited by the younger cartoonists, I have no doubt that everybody in this room one day is going to join Lynn, me, Mike Peters, Mark Gerberg, Jeff Keane, Brian Walker, Kathy Geiswhite, and all of us old guard as being members of the old guard as well. And then, too, you're going to be gawked at by starry-eyed young cartoonists. So enjoy. So. Speaking of old guard and middle-aged guard and young guard, the nominees are First, a question. Are we having fun yet? This year's winner is Bill Griffith.
I have a little speech prepared, which I will give, but I have to get something off my chest. Does this look familiar to anybody? Yeah? That's my wife, Diane Newman, who was left out of the memoriam presentation, which I took as a great insult to her. If she had been here, she would have left the room crying. I'm sorry, there's nothing funny about it. I don't know how this happened, how it could have been, how something so egregious could happen. Aileen Kaminsky, her compatriot in comics for all those years, was shown at the San Diego Comic Con. They did a nice thing for Diane. which really kind of cracked me up. But you guys left her out.
Bill, she was in last year. I'm sorry. She was in last year.
Okay, but I'm here today.
Okay, sorry.
So you should have had it today. I wasn't here last year. Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Okay. So I just took a big crap on the rug here, and I've received a few awards in my life, but the only one that I really wanted was this one, and it wasn't because of the honor. It was because of the award itself, because of the sculpture created by Rube Goldberg. This will take a great place on my shelf in my studio. The very nice to get Eisner Awards, but why is it a globe? I don't know why it's a globe. It doesn't make any sense. This makes a lot of sense. So yes, this is nice. This is really nice. And it reminds me of another award I received back in my underground days in San Francisco. Okay, so go back in your time machine a little bit. It was in 1995. And the comics publisher Last Gasp, who published most of my Zippy comics, all during the 70s and 80s and 90s, they were celebrating their 25th anniversary with a big party, complete with the handing out of many awards. They were operating on a shoestring budget, being undergrounders, so the awards given out that night were actually bowling trophies that had been picked up in thrift shops, and colorful feathers have been glued to the top of the bowling trophies, okay? So as with these awards, there were nominees and people got awards, and then it was my turn. So I got up on stage, and I took my award. I gave a short speech. I left the stage with my award in hand. As I got to the last step at the bottom, a young guy in punk, looking very punk gear with, crazy hair, looked at me and my bowling trophy, and he said, "Wow, man, what did you get that for?" And I said, "It's my Lifetime Achievement Award," to which he responded, "Bummer." That kind of sums up a lot of what I think about awards in general, but So one more anecdote, and I'll wrap it up. This is really directly related to Zippy and to syndication. I don't know if you guys are aware of the evolution of how Zippy became to be syndicated. It was in 1985. I'm living in San Francisco. I got a call from Will Hearst III. He was maybe in his late 30s. He'd just been handed the reins of the San Francisco Examiner, which was a dying afternoon newspaper. I guess it was assumed that Will had nowhere to go but up with it, and Uncle Randolph literally gave him the paper. So what did he do? He called me up. He said, would you do Zippy daily for the Examiner? He then called Robert Crumb and Hunter Thompson and asked them if they would work for him. So Robert said no immediately, of course. But Aileen, his wife, said, let's give it a shot. It'll be fun. In the 1980s and even earlier, they were doing strips that were kind of generally called dirty laundry. So these were real life telling of their relationship with warts and all, sex and all, filthy language and all. So Aileen convinced Robert to try to do this thing for Hearst. They produced 20 strips. They delivered them to Hearst. They were filled with nudity, graphic sex, and four-letter words. They were rejected, obviously, on the spot. Hunter Thompson agreed to work for the Examiner. He was supposed to do a column, I guess, once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks. He did 2 or 3 columns and then never met another deadline. So Will called him to a meeting at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. As I was at this meeting, as Will approached the hotel door where Hunter Thompson was behind, gunshot rang out gunshots rang out. Hunter Thompson shot through the door, I guess possibly intending to kill Will. This is not, I'm not making this up. He was, of course, drunk out of his mind. That was the end of Hunter Thompson's stay at the San Francisco Examiner. I lasted. I did, for 1 year, I did a daily Zippy, which appeared on page 2 of the front section of the paper, not on the comics pages. It was about 10 inches wide with a logo on the top. I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. Then I found out Randolph, the uncle, who, by the way, actually lived in San Simeon, the Hearst Castle, hated myself, and he finally convinced Will. He tried to convince Will to kill the strip, but Will said, how about if we just put it on the comics page and we'll hide it below Garfield? Okay? And that way, Randolph doesn't have to look at it when he opens up his paper on page 2. So that went on for another 6 months or so. Okay, then I get a call. I don't know if he's probably not here. A man named Alan Prio, an executive at King Features. He called me and he said, I'd like to come out and talk to you about King Features taking Zippy national. So I said, are you serious? You mean a job? An actual job? So he came, we had the meeting. I came with a list of demands. I thought I was like taking hostages or something. I had financial demands. I said, you can't control in any editorial way what I do. The whole list of demands, I figured that would kill it and I would just stay with the Examiner because it was a friendly relationship I had with Will. And I thought King was just not my world. It was too big, too mainstream. But he agreed to every single thing. So I was kind of stuck. So I said, okay. I came to New York. I remember there was a meeting of the salesmen. My only advice to them was to say, when you go into the comics editor of the paper, just say it's the weirdest comic strip in America. That's my pitch. They had no idea how to sell it. But it did okay, nothing spectacular. So another 6 months go by, and I get a call from Alan Prio at King Features. And he says, Bill, I'm calling you because I'm leaving King. And I thought, this was about 6 months before Jay Kennedy arrived. So I thought, okay, Alan Prio is my champion. He's leaving. That's it. It's over. Then came the punchline. He said, I want to thank you, Bill, for allowing me to leave a ticking time bomb on King's doorstep. Okay, it's almost 40 years later, and the time bomb finally went off, and it left me holding a Reuben Award. Thank you very much.